That's loud, that's better. Thank you. Who of you can speak English? Oh, okay, everyone. So you can, I will try not to be too fast. I speak very fast. So if I'm too fast, you say slow down. And also for the translator, I don't know, the translator is in the online box. If I'm too fast, you say, because I know translation always takes a bit more time. But I brought you a lot of data. So what I wanted you to learn today, it's a pleasure. It's the first time I talk in front of a Turkish audience. I have given thousands of talks, but never in Turkey. So I'm very pleased to be here and do that today. So what I want to introduce you is in one of the largest mental training study of the world, which is called Resource Project. And this is a project which has tested 300 participants over a year, going through different mindfulness, compassion-based mental training practices. And we have learned a lot. We have more than 65 papers out on this project alone. And it's a good example of what we know about compassion, mindfulness, and mental training nowadays, yes? But before I go into the results of the resource project, I will show you the design. I want to tell you a little bit more about what we call the social brain. So the social brain meaning our capacity to understand other people's feelings, thoughts, emotions, intentions, actions. So it is what makes us a social being, and how the brain circuitry for empathy, compassion, perspective taking are supporting that, right? Because if you don't understand these, it's difficult to understand mental training. Yeah, mental training always comes as a second step. And then I will talk about data, like results, you know, what can we find when we do this type of mental training? Brain, stress, pro-social behavior, well-being. And in the second part of the talk, I will talk about unpublished data which are just emerging of a study we did during the pandemic. It's called the Social Project, yeah? So I have a lot of things to talk to, so let's start. So you see on the left hand, the Resource Project. It's a long, 9 months, huge study. And on the other side is the Social Project, which is a low dose, purely online training to see whether we can scale the efforts we have, everything we learned from Resource Project now to bring it into society and to help people with online trainings to get out of loneliness, depression, anxiety, and make them happy. So why do we do what we call this mental training research, mindfulness, compassion-based, contemplative training research? It is because when we started the project in 2008, I had written the grant for the Resource Project, and then we assessed data 2013 and 16. We already had a problem of stress, loneliness, too much individualism, depression. But now in 2023, all these problems are 10 times bigger. So it didn't get better in the world, it get worse. So after the pandemic, after all the crises we are going through, loneliness became a real epidemic, right? And the younger people, 18 to 25 years old, nowadays are the most lonely population of all the cohorts. Not 80 plus, the old people, it's the young. So there is a real problem, and we have exponential increases in depression in 15-year-olds nowadays in America. So we have increasing suicide rates in the youngest, not in the oldest. So we have a real problem, a mental health tsunami, I'm calling that. It is much worse than actually, in the pandemic, the virus itself, because it is a mental health challenge which affects the whole world. And I'm sure Turkey as well. I'm not so familiar with Turkish epidemiology, but this is worldwide. And as you know, one crisis is hitting the next. No, you had also a pandemic, 2 years lockdowns, everything closed, everyone at home, and now you have another disaster, a natural disaster, right? You have an earthquake. So one crisis is following the next crisis with different collective stressors. We call that collective stressor because the whole nation is affected, through media and so. So how do we deal with uncertainty, with this collective stressor, one crisis after the other? How can we cope to not become depressed, anxious, lonely? And how can we build resilience, right? So the question we have, of course, in natural disasters like you experienced, of course, building really good houses, hospital, all these things are important. But I'm a psychologist, I'm a neuroscientist. So my question is, how can we change things for the better from within? Not like institutional laws or this is economy and politics, but how can we as individuals do something to become more resilient and to cope better with the crises which are going on in the whole world all the time? So it's from within. And this is where the question comes, can we actually train and change our ability to become global citizen, to have global cooperation, not just cooperation with our friends and family and father and mother in which we love, but for the whole world, people we don't know, people who from different cultures, different religious background. And that is what we call global citizenship or global cooperation. And for that, you need mental training, because biology and evolution has made us a little bit selfish, right? Sometimes you're like, we care about the children and our family, but then the West, outgroup. So how can we widen our circle of cooperation and compassion? How can we become, widen social cohesion, like really foster interdependence and all these qualities to really, and then of course, how can we boost mental health and reduce stress? That is the mental health aspect of this research. So that is the questions, and this is a study. And now I will introduce you into the design of the resource project. And so you have to memorize the colors. The colors are very important. Am I too fast or is it okay? Is okay? You can follow? Yeah. And also the translation is okay? Good. I don't see anyone with. Yeah, some people. Okay. So the colors are very important because the results, the data I will show you are color coded. Yeah, they are. So everyone knows about mindfulness here, no? More or less. Okay, I hope mindfulness. So the first, these are training modules and they are 3 months long. Yeah, so MBSR course is usually 8 weeks. This were like 13 weeks, a little bit longer. And the first 3 months is very much what classic mindfulness, classic attention-based, focused mindfulness exercise. Now the red, whoops. It's my, I have to speak like that. The red one is like care and compassion. So why we put it in red, it's because it is qualities of the heart. It's socio-emotional qualities. It's like training gratitude, care, loving kindness, compassion, acceptance. And Zumra will talk about her newest book on acceptance. So it's how to accept whatever is anger, stress, difficult emotion. Be grateful for your life, be loving, being concerned about the other. It's all the heart qualities we have. Now the green module, 3 months, is cognitive. It's basically socio-cognitive ability to take and switch perspective. So it's what we call in psychology metacognitive ability. So that you are watching you thinking. You are watching parts of your personality. It's a metacognitive bird's eye view on your own self and on the other. So mind reading, like how can I understand the thoughts of another person, what he is believing, the belief system. And that is very, very important for global conflict resolution, for conflicts, because I will come to that later. Okay, so you see, they have 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, and the blue, then we have another cohort, they do the modules in another sequence. So they start with the cognitive module and then they do the compassion module. We call that active control group in science. We can compare the effect of socio-emotional training as compared to socio-cognitive training, keeping everything else constant. And that is a very conservative design, because then you really know which practice is doing what. So you have to imagine in the sport, domain, if you do muscle training, this would be one group would do 3 months on a machine, this training for the hand. And another group, the green one, would do a machine with this muscle here. And so then we can compare the effect of this training with this training, right? We're just doing it in the brain. Mentally, it's in there. Okay, the blue group are the real altruists. The blue groups, they are not learning anything. They are not training anything, but they get tested over 9 months in 90 different measures every 3 months. And we call that the retest control group. This means they have not learned anything, but they went through the same year with all the, so it's another control group. Okay, that is retreats. At the beginning of a 3 months module, you see 80 people sitting in a big hall and learning the practice of a module. And we had 17 different mindfulness teachers learning this 1-year program and teaching the 300 people in these practices. And then we had an app, cell phone app. And the app would ask you every day to practice 30 minutes. And each module had 2 core exercises you had to do every day 30 minutes at home through the app. And the core exercises daily at home in the mindfulness module were very classic mindfulness, body scan, breathing meditation. You probably know of them because that's classic mindfulness. Okay, now the social, affective, emotional compassion module had a classic loving kindness meditation, which is very known in the field. And you see these 2 people, you see the word dyad, and I will introduce you into this new practice later, because this practice is a intersubjective mindfulness partner-based practice. So through the app, every day I get connected with someone from my group and I'm practicing with this person, empathy, compassion, and so on. I will talk about that later because this has been one of the most efficient exercise of the whole project. And so we are building on that one now, doing a lot of research on that. Now the green module, you have a classic meditation you do alone, which is called observing your thoughts. This is also part of MBSR sometimes. So it's like metacognitive awareness on, oh, I'm thinking, you know, monkey mind. And you see the 2 people, a perspective diet. And the perspective diet is again with a partner through the app every day, a specific exercise, how to switch perspective. You know, how to understand the thoughts of others and your own inner parts. Then we have measured more than 90 different tasks, brain, genetics, questionnaires, momentary ecological assessment through the app. It's like bing, bing, bing. How stressed are you now? 20 minutes later, bing, bing, bing. How lonely do you feel? Bing, bing, bing. So people were very busy in this study. And there were 18 to 65-year-old normal people in their busy lives. So, but I can tell you already, we had less than 8% dropout. So meaning people were extremely engaged and compliant. They loved to do this, even though it was a lot asking them for a year. Okay, so now before I show you whether it worked, you know, it was a high-risk study at that time. Nobody had ever done that. People said, are you crazy, Tania? You cannot have 9 months, 30 minutes every day, retreats, testing, 90 measures with normal people in their normal lives, with kids at home. You will have a dropout rate of, 89% after 3 weeks. No, we had less than 8% after a year. Absolute Guinness Book of Records. And why? Because people love doing the exercises. And why did people ask, why do you have these two modules? Why do you separate, observing thoughts from meta? Why do you have these two social modules? Why do we have that? It's because of science, because of social neuroscience, because of knowing that our social brain is much more complex than people in clinical domain usually think. So usually, if I would ask clinical psychologists of the older school, what is empathy? They would say, everything which is about the other. No, everything about understanding the other. No, we know from neuroscience and from a lot of work that actually the social brain has different emotions and cognitions, allowing you to distinguish emotion contagion. So emotion contagion is if you get stressed, I get stressed on my hormone level, but I don't know that you were actually the source. It's like an infection. Yeah, so you are happy. So for example, laughing contagion, no? If you start laughing, ha, ha, ha, you know that a lot is like everyone starts laughing. There's experiments in the tube. Or if I would do yawning, like this, you would start yawning. I don't want to do that. You have to get awake. But this is contagion. Empathy is also sharing feelings. So if you suffer, I suffer. If you are happy, I'm happy. But you see the box self-other distinction, meaning I know that now the suffering comes from you, it's not mine. I know that I'm conscious. I'm conscious that I'm now carrying a feeling for you, with you, but it's not my own. And how did we measure empathy, empathic resonance in neuroscience? So that was, how do I click? Can you click the video? So you have a scanner, brain scanner. Does it work? No, okay, it doesn't work. So imagine I'm lying in the scanner and next to the scanner, here, there is my husband. And on the hand, I get painful, nociceptive pain stimuli. And then the green network in my brain, the pain matrix, lights up. And sometimes I see flashes, and now I only know, oh, my partner suffering pain now on the hand, like bee sting. Like, oh, now my partner, but nothing comes into my brain and body. I only know, oh, my partner now getting pain. And what you see in the brain is the red, the networks marked in red, anterior cingulate and insula, light up like Christmas tree, because I am sharing the pain for my husband in the same networks which are processing my own emotional unpleasant feeling of pain. So I am simulating, reactivating my own parts of affective pain to understand how it feels for the other. I'm sharing activation in the same networks, right? And so when we published this in Science in 2004, it was the first empathy experiment in neuroscience ever done, because you were measuring the first time the emotion of another and not yourself. It was not something you were feeling, it was someone outside. And still my brain was sharing the pain in reactivating pain. So at that time I said, oh my God, everyone needs to be trained in empathy. We will have a better world. Everyone should now go through training. And I thought at that time, empathy, compassion, same. I don't know for the Turkish words. In German, they are very, very similar. So it's very difficult. But I understood through the research, and I will tell you a story, that actually empathy and compassion are two social emotions to the suffering of someone, totally different. They couldn't be more different. And most clinical psychologists have not understood it yet. And you can train how to make the difference between empathy and compassion, and this will save your life. I will tell you about it because you will not risk to go into burnout and empathic distress anymore. Because compassion, I will show you why, is not sharing the feeling. If you suffer, I don't necessarily have to also suffer or feel pain. It is coming from an evolutionary care system, affiliation and care. It's another motivational system in the brain. And it is, oh yeah, that's the story. This is a system which is about love and care and concern for another, and the altruistic motivation. It's a motivation to help. It's like, it's coming from mother-child bond. You know, a mother would go, if the child is in danger, a mother would run under a car to save the child and would not ask, is it rational to save my child now? Should I save the child or should I not save the child? Evolution is like you run and you save your child, even if your life is at danger, right? This is the altruistic care motivation. And this is the basis for compassion. Empathy is different. So how did I learn that? I was in England doing empathy neuroscience study, wanting to train everyone in empathy compassion. Usually you look for experts. If you start plasticity research, training research, you look for experts. Like, for example, in motor research, you would look for pianists or violinists who have done thousands of hours of playing to see whether the structure in the brain changes through practice. Now, I looked in the world, who are the experts on empathy compassion? Who is training thousands of hours over many years, every day, compassion, empathy? You know, not so easy to find the expert. But I was part of the Mind and Life Institute, which is a dialogue between Western science and the Dalai Lama, contemplative Eastern meditation tradition. And you see here a conference in Dharamsala in India, where a lot of Nobel Prize, all the men in jackets, the Western, they are Nobel Prize winning astrophysicists, psychologists, neuroscientists. And on the other side, there were all the monks, all the meditators, and we debated how we can learn from each other. In 2000, the Dalai Lama said, this is another of this, where is Tania? This is Tania. And these are 10,000 guinea pigs, 10,000 monks, which we were working and training in science. So they come into our lab, they fly into Zurich and London, the very long-term practitioner. We hook them into scanner or in EEG, and then we study their brains while they're doing what they do. So this is Mathieu Ricard, my favorite guinea pig, because Mathieu is a French guy. He's a French person, and he has been a molecular biologist in Institut Pasteur. So he is a researcher. But then with young age, he thought, all the researchers are so unhappy. They are intelligent, but not happy. So he went into Himalaya and became the pupil of one of the biggest compassion masters in Buddhism. So he is now one very well-trained mental expert, right? But the good thing with him is he knows science, he knows Western science. So you can dialogue, you can make experiments, and he knows what we need. So we asked him in the scanner, can you go 60% intensity into anger, 30% into compassion, 90% disgust, you know, and he would do it. If I would ask you to do that, you would say, no way, I can't switch in and out of states. He can do it with 30, 60, 90% accuracy. Like for us, it was like watching a rocket going to the moon, because we had never ever seen such pure data ever when someone was going in and out of states like that. So I asked him and I said, can you suffer with these? He had seen a BBC movie of a lot of suffering, earthquake, children, war. And can you just empathize and go in compassion for them? At that time, I thought it's the same thing. And he would activate networks in the brain, which are not the pain network. They are not the empathy for suffering network. They are reward networks, affiliation, positive emotions. So I was like, what is he doing? Is he thinking about his breakfast? Is he, you know, what is he enjoying? What, I mean, he's not suffering. What is he doing? So I asked him, I said, are you thinking about lunch? You have reward networks lighting up. And he's like, no, I'm full in compassion and love. You did not ask me to suffer with these children. I'm in full compassion. So we were debating. I said, can you, just for the sake of science, just do empathy, just suffer with the other, you know, in resonance. And then I saw the other lighting up, the other network. So what we understood is that there are two different networks in the brain. Empathy is a healthy response to suffering. So imagine you have seen so many news, no? You have seen earthquake news the last weeks, no? In the news, you have heard suffering from people dying in hospital. What happens when you are not a psychopath, if you are a normal, healthy person, not a psychopath, is that your brain will have an empathic response. It will naturally feel the pain of these people suffering in the news, you know? The problem is if this, what I call self-other distinction, is blurred, meaning now you think the suffering is not anymore, that's another being, this is another person, but it becomes your own. And then this is what we call moving into personal or empathic distress. And empathic distress is very dangerous because it's not healthy empathy anymore. It is becoming all about your own stress and your own. And if you are very chronically in empathic distress, you will burn out and your health will be detrimental. And that is why in healthcare profession, hospitals, but also therapy, the burnout rate is so high. The burnout rate in healthcare profession across the world is incrementally high. It is mad. It is sometimes 70 to 80% at the moment. It is really, really bad. Healthcare providers drop out like flies from the institution since the pandemic. So we have to protect healthcare workers. We have to do something for them to learn how to, from a healthy empathic resonance, to move into compassion and not to end up in distress, in personal distress and burnout. So how to move from empathy into compassion, this is what we are training people, because we have done many, many studies showing that when you move into compassion, you activate care and affiliative network in the brain. And these networks are resilient. They protect you from burning out. Like Matthew said, you know, the monk in the scanner, he said, oh my God, the difference between when I'm going into empathic distress, I burn out. I feel really drained, depleted. I can't do it anymore. But when I move into compassion, into care, into this altruistic motivation, into this loving kindness, then I'm resilient. I cannot burn out of too much love. He said, you cannot burn out of too much love. So we have suggested in the field that we should rename the concept compassion fatigue. You know, this is a wrong concept. It should be called empathic distress fatigue, not compassion fatigue, because compassion is resilient. You cannot burn out of too much love, but you can burn out of too much sharing, suffering, and becoming like yourself, right? So this is what we train people and healthcare worker in this affective module, is how to sense and how to go from one state into the other. And if you end up in empathic distress, how do you get out again? How do you come out into compassion? So what do we do in the green? Why do we have this green module, right? The other one. And that is also based on science. It's based on what is called theory of mind. Sorry, in Turkish, theory of mind, but it's also cognitive perspective taking, you know, the ability to take the perspective of another is a cognitive way, a bird's eye to get into the mind of another. And why do we need it? I have now just take one international conflict. You could take every international conflict. So the care system, right? I talked about the care system. Usually it works well, compassion for children, your family, your related kids, friends. But when you have to have compassion for people who were your enemies, or who hurt you, who have other religious beliefs, who have totally different generation, different cultures, then compassion becomes very difficult. We are not made evolutionary for that. It's in-group, out-group. I have a lot of empathy and compassion for my in-group. I don't have anything for out-group. And we have done a lot of scanner experiment on that. You can see how empathy switch on and off in milliseconds, right? So to overcome this in-group, out-group bias, you have to perspective taking. You have to understand that another person has different beliefs, cultural, religious, and you have to suppress your own beliefs, which you always think I'm white, right? You're always like, I'm white, they are wrong. And you have to go onto the mind of the other to understand why someone is acting. And that you can train. It's called perspective taking. But it is very difficult, much more difficult than training empathy and compassion. So we know from neuroscience, from tasks we do, that there are two different networks. In green is the brain network, is also overlapping with the default network. The very famous resting state default network is overlapping with this mentalizing network. And this is about reasoning. This is about thinking about others. This is about cognitive perspective taking on self or on others, same. And the red network, the limbic network with insular, anterior insular, is for empathy and compassion. These are like feeling, this is limbic structures in the brain. And then I told you empathy, compassion, two different networks, right? But they are emotional networks, they are interoceptive networks. And because we have a network for empathy, a network for compassion, and a network for cognitive perspective taking here, we can train them through different exercise. Like in sports, right? You have different capacity, you train them with different. If I want to train my body, I don't go in one machine, no? I train my muscles in the hand with another machine than for my feet, no? Same is for the brain. So this is why we have devised these different modules. And now came the big day, because when I was young, people said you cannot train and change your brain after 25 years of age. Your gray matter in your brain decreases because of aging, atrophy, get thinner and thinner, and then you eventually die, get Alzheimer, and that's it. No plasticity. And certainly there was absolutely zero plasticity research in the field of social emotions. Empathy, compassion, can you measure that? Train that? I mean, this is soft skills. You know, I always say they are equally hardwired than any other skill. We should stop saying soft skill. They are hard skills. And without these skills, humanity cannot survive. Compassion is not a luxury, it's a necessity, right? Empathy is a necessity. And it is hardwired in our brain, and we can train it. So I show you the data. This is increase in gray matter. The cells get bigger through training. It's plasticity, what we call structural plasticity. It's the hardware of your brain getting faster and better. Yeah. And you see, after 3 months of mindfulness training, attention goes better. And the networks, prefrontal networks, which are important for attention skill and monitoring, get thicker. After the same brain, 3 months of compassion heart-based practice, compassion comes in, compassion gets better on behavioral tasks, and limbic structure, the insula, the ICC, become thicker. Other networks I have shown you important for emotions. And then same people, 3 months later, they are doing everyday perspective-taking exercise with a partner through the app every day. And what gets bigger? The TPJ and the whole mentalizing network, the default network, just get thicker. So it really means, wow, we have plasticity even if we are 43 and 55 years of age, like old people like me, can learn and change the hardware of the brain with specific exercises. But what these data also show is that it matters what you practice. It's really important what you do every day with your mind. So you see different results if you do mindfulness than if you do compassion every day or if you do perspective taking. So we have to stop thinking meditation, mindfulness, one thing. It's not. It matters which exercise you do every day with your mind. And this will have totally different results in your brain, behavior, hormone, body. So we have to become more differentiated in the field. How we talk about mindfulness is not one thing. It's a bit like sport. You know, if a journalist would call me and say, Tania, you are an expert in sports. What does sport do? I would say, which sport? Tennis or riding, or, you know, it does really different things. So this is like, you know, so that's really important. It matters what you practice, but only 30 minutes a day in an aging old brain like mine can change your brain behavior and everything. And it's proven by hardcore science, right? Okay, so now about stress. You know that MBSR is called mindfulness-based stress reduction, right? So the word stress is in the program, in the word of the program. But if you look at the literature, there's mainly questionnaire research, because in the clinic, people have no time, so they give questionnaires. Do you feel less stressed? Yes, I feel much less stressed. You know, after 8 weeks of MBSR doing everyday practice, do you feel better? Yes, I feel better. Okay, now we looked at the hormones, the stress hormone, cortisol, in a social stressor task. So what is a social stressor task? It is what I'm doing here, but now imagine I would talk and, you know, about myself and, you know, give a lot of vulnerable information for me like this person, but you would not be so kind and nodding and laughing at me. You would sit there like with white kittle, like doctors, they are trained to do that. And they say like, oh. You know, they would give me negative feedback. This would lead, if I take the cortisol in saliva, this would lead to a cortisol stress response, because I would feel evaluated. I would feel I'm not good enough. I'm not saying the right thing. They don't understand my English. I'm too fat. Oh, I have not high heel shoes. Then like all the Turkish have high heel shoes and I have like my sneakers. And, you know, I would start judging myself like we do all the time. No judging mind. It's like I'm not, you know, something is wrong with me. And that is the major reasons for stress disease in our countries. It's not because of hunger or so on. It's because of social stress. And we can measure that. So now the interesting thing was, which of the 3 modules will reduce social stress on the hormone axis of our HPH system, stress system? So do you think who of you think, this is the control group, who of you think will mindfulness, 3 months attention-based mindfulness will reduce cortisol stress? Who of you think that it will be reduced? 2. But it's mindfulness. So it's mindfulness-based stress reduction here, yeah? So yeah, I will explain. Okay, so this is the result. 3 months of only attention-based mindfulness. You know, if you only do attention-based mindfulness, not MBSR, but like attention-based breathing, body scan, there is no reduction in social stress. Different stress, yes, but not social. If you look at the dyadic modules, the modules which have intersubjective dyadic practices, 51% stress reduction, 51% of the original things. So we were like, why? Why is the compassion-based and perspective so much more powerful? Because every day you do these diets with another person. I will talk about it later. But before, for the nurses and for all the economists and for people in the more economic world, is the question, can this training not only change brain and stress and boost mental health and resilience, but can it change cooperation? Can we become more cooperative, give more money, more donation, more altruistic? And for that, I don't show you this movie for time. We have used economic games. We have used economic paradigms where you have to give real money to other people, trust money, play for money, reciprocate. So it's like pure, real altruism. It's like giving something away. And we found that only when you do compassion-based, care-based practice, cooperation gets better, altruism gets better, giving gets better. So, so that was very interesting as well. And here comes now this dyadic practice. So what is this dyadic practice? What is it? No, partner-based. The field is more and more interested in this, what we call intersubjective mindfulness. It's like social mindfulness. It's not me alone. It's like me in direct practice with another person. So if you are in a room, you are sitting eye to eye with another person. If you are on an app at home, you have on the phone or through a video conference, right? It's through an app. And what are you doing? There is a listener and there is a speaker. So imagine I'm doing a diet with Zümra now. So I'm now the listener, and Zümra will be exploring her emotions, and I'm paired randomly with her. And so I'm like, you know, with an app, and I'm like, hello, Zümra, hello. And then Zümra says, hello, Tania. And then, you know, the app is really like ding, dang, dong. It's a real exercise. We don't have a lot of time to chit chat. We cannot like, well, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, please tell me, Zümra, an emotion, a situation of your last day where you had stress or difficult emotion. And how did you experience this emotion in your body? And then I'm just empathic listening. I'm not allowed to interrupt, not allowed to say anything. I'm just there for Zümra. And Zümra starts like in a meditation, but loud, like in a mindfulness meditation, but loud. And Zümra would say, yeah, you can, for example, like, you know, how was that a difficult situation and how did it feel in your body?
I would
you
like
can
to
be
ask
in Turkish if you want.
For the translation. Dün evet akşam yani burası için hazırlanırken biraz saat geç oldu, bir takım şeyleri uygulamak zorundayım. Onun için de biraz gerginlik hissettim. Midemde hissettim. Bağırsaklarım çok çalışıyordu. Öyle bir böyle kıpırtı hissettim. Omuzlarımı sıktığımı hissettim. Omuzlarım. Çenemde bir gerginlik vardı. Bir de bir hiper erozul oldu, böyle hiper, yani dolaşıyorum, bakıyorum, işten işe atlıyorum, dikkat eksikliği gibi, böyle kıpır kıpır böyle.
And then it's like the app gong. Thank you, Zümra. Thank you so much. And now, Zümra, take another situation of your day, same day. We do every day, no? And where did you feel gratitude, thankfulness, gratitude? And how did that feel in your body? And then the app makes gong, and now you stop. You have to repeat the question.
Birlikteydik ve Pera Palace Oteli'nde kahve içiyorduk. Ve we were in Pera Palace and drinking coffee. I felt the gratitude. Ben o zaman böyle bir an oldu, hatırlıyorum onu. Dedim ki çok güzel, şu anda çok derin bir sohbetin içindeyim, çok şanslıyım. Çok sıcak, hoş bir mekan. O anda bir konuyla ilgili konuşuyorduk. O anda hissettim onu, evet, onu hatırladım ilk yani söylediğimde.
So whatever she said, thank you, Zümra. And then the gong, and then we go 1 minute in silence, you know, to settle back into our body, to concentrate like mindfully. And then now Zümra asked me for a difficult emotion, and I'm contemplating, and then she asked me for gratefulness, and I'm contemplating gratefulness, okay? And so the exercise takes 12 minutes, it's totally democratic. And what are you training? You are training empathic listening, because every day I'm listening to someone else, non-judgmental, without judging Zümra, because next minute I will be the one who could be judged, you know? So I don't want to judge Zümra. I don't want to be judged either. So it's very quickly you learn. And every week I'm coupled with a new partner. So after a week with Zümra, I'm with you. And a whole week we're doing this exercise. So after 10 weeks of the training, I have 10 people from you where I looked in your life every day, a little bit in your life, and I just listened empathically, and you learn how to weed out your body language, body signal. We call that interoceptive body awareness in science. Interoceptive body awareness is very important for all psychosomatic diseases and for all psychopathology diseases, because schizophrenia, autism, depression, they are all with a deficit in interoceptive body awareness associated. So, and what we also build up through gratitude is the care system. I talked about the care system is the base for gratitude, loving kindness, compassion. They are like a house where all these sisters are living in, no? So all these social emotion building up positive outlook in life and resilience, right? And I will show you now data. I just go through this study. So the important thing is the diet, people said, nobody will do that. Busy day, every day, a rendezvous, 12 minutes, someone you don't know, telling about super intimate, vulnerable emotions of yourself. Everyone did it and loved it. It is addictive. After the first week of a bit shyness, it becomes so addictive because someone listening to you, someone, and you just sharing what is on your heart, right? It's a real, authentic way of communication without interruption. So that was just the summary of the resource project. I don't know how much, I have no watch. So what I showed you in this first study, this big study, is that it really matters what you practice, no? I showed you that depending on the exercise you do every day, the mental training, through mindfulness, you can increase attention, you can increase working memory, you can change the attention system in the monitoring attention working memory system in your brain. Through compassion-based exercises, through care-based exercises, you can increase donation, pro-social behavior, compassion. 20 minutes, okay. And brain plasticity in other networks, in empathy, in limbic networks, in emotional feeling networks, interoceptive body networks in the brain. And through doing perspective taking, metacognition every day, you increase default mode overlapping mentalizing networks and self-other distinction like TPJ, you know, who helps you to really take the perspective of the other and not being so egocentrically identified with your own perspective and views. And I showed you that you can reduce stress, but mindfulness is very good for subjective questionnaire reducing stress. But if you want to reduce social stress on the cortisol axis, the stress of not feeling worthy, of feeling not good enough, of feeling shame and so on, then doing dyadic, intersubjective social practice every day is much more efficient. And we just have data we saw a week ago in Germany in our study of social study, replicating these stress data the first time with just 10 minutes, 10 weeks online. So I will come to that. So, and this, I didn't show you data. We have so many data, right? I could give a workshop of a week on this project. So, so now the whole world call me and write email and say, can we have the program for schools and for prisons and for healthcare and hospitals? And I was like, you know, you have to train, it's 9 months. You have to train 17 teachers. You need a lot of money. It's very intense. So I was saying, how can you scale the science-based programs for society? How can you bring it into a scalable online and really scalable format? So how it always is, no? Life can give you, crisis can be a chance. You know, out of the worst crisis, you can always learn and do something. So here we were, 2020, in the middle of a pandemic. I could not go in labs anymore, no scanning anymore. I was in Berlin, could not do research. So I took my app from Resource Project and I started a mental health COVID study. And so I sent out 60,000 letters. We were a big group of Berlin professors and people who cooperated to basically track how is the mental health and resilience and social cohesion changing of Berlin population throughout the years 2020-21. And in Germany, the first lockdown was in March, April 2020. I don't know for Turkey, when was yours? It was the same time, right? So the first lockdown, I think in the whole world was more or less the same time. And after the first March, April lockdown, in June, the Germans, they thought, it's over. Oh, all in holiday, flying out, restaurants, it's over. And then, no, it was not over, like for the whole world. And we went into another lockdown, which was 6 months long. 6 months at home in a little city block room. I don't know, do you had a second lockdown like that? Also 6, 7 months, so you know how it feels, right? People were going mad. So we were sending questionnaires, resilience questionnaire, depression, anxiety, social cohesion, everything, like 3 hours assessment to thousands of Berliners to know how they were feeling in these different lockdown reopening, yeah? And I will talk about phase 2 in a minute, because phase 2 was relevant to mindfulness. After having seen how bad they were and how much suffering was there, we said, how can we give something back? Can we train, you know, can we boost mental health? Can we get people out of loneliness? I will talk about that in a minute. But first, phase 1, you know, Berliners, they had to have a smartphone, German. The first phase, we could mostly only give genetic, we sent, you know, pipettes for genetic marker, but mostly was questionnaire because we were at home. Well, they could not come in our lab. So, but in the second phase, they could come in our labs, and we had a lot of computer and cortisol and TSST and lab markers. So how did it look like? So because of time, I only show you one data set. of vulnerability. But the pattern I show you is the same for all the variables. For resilience marker, for social cohesion marker, always the same pattern. So in January, depression, loneliness, anxiety, stress was on the levels we would observe in Berlin normally. Yeah, you have some people have a bit anxiety, depression, loneliness. Then comes the first lockdown, and you see the red curve. You see depression going up, anxiety going up, loneliness going up, stress going up, first lockdown. However, you see the red curve bouncing back again. You see it goes down again in June because people were recovering. They are very resilient. Most of the people were like, oh, over, and coming almost back to baseline. And you remember there was a lot of humor and videos, and people shared funny stories and a lot of solidarity. And you will see that also, I think, for you in the earthquake, when there is a shock, a collective stressor coming up, like an earthquake, hurricane, or which is new and just short, basic. What you usually have is rally around the flag and solidarity and tend and befriend, meaning people are more cooperative, more helping, more altruistic, coming together. However, the problem with the pandemic, it never stopped. So when people entered in the second lockdown, you see the second curve. You see that every month depression goes up, every month anxiety goes up. With every month of lockdown, loneliness gets worse. And this has been in every study in the world now be shown. The long, never-ending lockdown were harming most the people because then they couldn't recover anymore. They could not bounce back. And resilience get worse and worse with every month. We call it pandemic fatigue effect. It's a chronic stressor fatigue effect. And what we also see in many studies around the world, we just did, if you want to know on our webpage, I will show it. We will have movies from an international conference we just did in December, where studies were compared from England, USA, Israel, Spain, all around the world about mental health during pandemic. And what you see in all studies, the women suffered most, more than the men, and the youngest. So you see the green one, you see the 18 to 20-year-old were those who suffered most, more than the older people, more than the 65-year-old. And the whole world shows these data. So our youngest people suffered the most from the lockdown and the pandemic and the collective stress, and they have to be supported the most. So you can, there is a brochure on these descriptive data, on phase 1 data, which you can download for free. This is the web page. And on this web page, you can find a lot of videos from the conference from all other researchers, on mental health in pandemic in the world. You can see short cuts and long cuts in a brochure. So you can download much more information if you're interested in mental health through pandemic in the world. Now I'm in a mindfulness conference, so I focus, can we do something about it? Can we boost mental health? Can we, get people out of loneliness? Can we, do something against what is called also narcissism epidemics? People getting me, instead of we, solidarity, the globe, the climate, the world, right? It's like me. So can we do something about that? Can we help people, for example, like you now, as being not only after a pandemic, but then the next collective stressor hits. And here you are again in collective trauma, right? After what happened. So can we reduce loneliness? Can we increase resilience? How you can cope with stressor better? How can you digest all that better? And do something about depression, anxiety, and at the same time boost, care, compassion, gratitude, and resilience. So that is phase 2. And here, we were lucky. We had our resource project. So we had an app And we had the breathing meditation ready, and we had the diet app ready. So now what we did, we took only one little exercise, 12 minutes mindfulness every day, and the other group did 12 minutes affect diet every day. Yeah. So it is what we would call a low dose training. It's purely online, purely app, only 12 minutes a day, 10 weeks. And every week, 90 minutes online training with teacher. Yeah, every week you have a deepening coaching session with teacher through the app. And we compare in red and pink is diet, is partner-based affect diet, the social-emotional practice we did with Zümra. And the other, the yellow one, is mindfulness, classic breathing, sound meditation, classic mindfulness practice. And then you see again, here's the control group, and then they do another diet. The pinky is also diets. It's both like partner-based. So this is our teachers online. Okay, because of time, so I just show you this one data set, and then I will hop immediately to the summary, because I have a lot of unpublished data, but I think we don't have the time, no? 10 minutes, okay, so what was already interesting, if you just focus on continuation here, you know, on this. After the 10 weeks, we asked our mindfulness group and the partner-based dyadic group, do you want to continue? Do you want to use the app, or do you want to stop? The study is over, right? You can, it's voluntarily. And a lot of people, you see 50 to 60%, 75% in the diet group and a little bit like less in the mindfulness group, said, yeah, we want to continue. And so we gave them the app for another 10 weeks because we were training the pinky group. So the red group and the yellow, they could use 10 weeks the app. And what you see is that the compliance in the diet group is much higher. You see the red line is keeping high. Whereas mindfulness, people get lazy. You know, they can meditate, download the app, but there is no one watching. There is no course. There is no teacher anymore. It's just you at home. And every week you do less. But with the diet, the partner-based exercise, there is a rendezvous. There is someone waiting for you. So you don't want the other to wait. So you do your practice. You do every day 12 minutes because you have a social community practicing with you. So this keeps the training very high. Then this is my PhD working at the moment in the lab, and she measured very different loneliness measures. She wanted to know, can we get people out of loneliness? And what you see here, even though it is just online, only 12 minutes, only in the diet group, the red one, right? This is unpublished data. They could reduce loneliness on one of the most famous loneliness scale, the UCLA loneliness scale. But mindfulness, it was not enough. Mindfulness alone was not enough to get any significant finding. Mindfulness is yellow. And the stars means significant effect, means this is an effect, you know, this is a statistically meaningful scientific effect. And we also peeped, you know, we had an app. So we were asking people in the middle of their day, before and after the 10 weeks training, how lonely do you feel now? Then they will learn, how lonely do you feel now? Over 4 times 8 days, we asked them in their real life how they were feeling, how stressed, how lonely. And you see again, only the dyadic group showed on these very ecologically daily measures a reduction in loneliness. Yeah, not the mindfulness group after 10 weeks for sure. So the diet seemed to be very, very good in bringing people out of loneliness. And of course, because it's a partner, right? There's another being listening to you. There is someone else in your life, even though very short, doing this very intimate personal exercise. And then we can also show, like before and after each practice, when we asked, you know, before a diet or before breathing meditation and after breathing meditation, you see that even after mindfulness meditation, loneliness got a little bit better. So here, when you ask every day, just after meditating, you also feel less lonely. And what was interesting, we could reproduce the effect that diets, you feel closer to the partner. And what we could show in the resource project, you even feel closer to the partner when it's a new partner. You know, every week it's a new person you don't know. And even before you even have done the diet, before you have done the exercise, you already feel more connected to the other, even though you don't know this person yet. And every week this goes better, meaning you're extending the feeling of social cohesion, of connectedness, of society, of social cohesion every day. Translation is tired.
Tired.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
she's
So
tired.
you know what?
Maybe we can just breathe and then go on.
Yeah,
maybe.
I just go over all the data and just go to the summary. Because anyhow, you cannot record them, right? So I just
Yeah,
go.
will not be recorded,
Exactly.
that
So,
part.
so all these non-published data now, I summarize them in a final slide for you. And then it's, you know, you get the message. So these very fresh 10 minutes online app-based training could reduce emotion regulation difficulties. It can improve your ability to regulate your emotion, you know, coping with emotion. It could reduce anxiety and stress on typical depression and anxiety scales used in psychiatry and clinical fields. It could boost compassion and self-compassion. So both, you know, mindfulness and dyadic training. And now it becomes, so that's alexithymia, that's a clinical thing. So now it becomes interesting because now the two trainings have different effects now. So while mindfulness was better in stress recovery scales, you know, how fast could you recover with stress, the resilience scales, you know, how optimistic you look in life, how resilient you are, how much social support is only increased through diets. Only in the partner dyadic group, resilience and positive outlook is increased. And what we could also show is only when you do every day these.
Ve biz her gün bu diyet çalışmasını yaptığımızda, yani bu egzersizi her gün devam ettirdiğimizde ve bir bilgisayar görevi verdiğimizde, çünkü normalde biz depresyonu diagnostik olarak, yani örneğin tanıyla ortaya çıkarabiliyoruz. Ne yapıyoruz? Bir bilgisayar görevi veriyoruz, bir computer test veriyoruz onlara ve ondan sonra da bilinç dünyayı daha pozitif mi yoksa daha negatif mi algılayıp algılamadıklarını soruyoruz ve depresyonu sonradan geliştirmiş olan kişilerde negatif bias olduğunu görüyoruz. Negatif taraflılık olduğunu görüyoruz. Yani negatif sapma diyelim olduğunu görüyoruz. Şimdi diyet çalışması yaptığınızda işte bu pozitif sapmayı arttırıp negatif sapmayı azaltabiliyorsunuz. Ve sadece partner-based çalışmada yalnızlık söz konusu ise onu sadece diyet çalışmasında iyileştiriyorsunuz. Kortizol düzeyleri ise sadece yine ki buna sosyal stresi de dahil edebiliriz, diyet çalışmasında azalıyor. Dolayısıyla gerçekten çok etkileyici bir çalışma. Sadece 12 dakika bir aplikasyon üzerinde, bu pandemiyle başlattığımız bir şeydi. Ama tabii diğer taraftan bunun için öğretmenlere de ihtiyacımız var. Şimdi tabii bu çalışmayı toplumsal düzeye aktarmamız gerekiyor. Bunun için farklı farklı aktarma mekanizmalarımız var. Bunun için bilim tabanlı bir müfredat oluşturulabilir. Ve işte bunlar sol tarafta. Bu arada ben yarı Fransızım, o yüzden Fransızca da yapıyorum zaman zaman bunları. Bunların hepsi sağlık çalışanları. Aralarında işte terapist var, hemşire var, hekim var, cerrah var ve aralarında afet çalışanları var ya da her gün işi gereği bu tür acılarla yüz yüze kalmak zorunda olan kişiler var. Bazen yoğun eğitim de verilebiliyor. ve empatik distres olan ya da şefkat sorunu olan kişiler yine 8 haftalık düetik çalışmayla, yani düet halinde çalışmayla, ikili çalışmayla bu çalışmaya giriyorlar ve 8 hafta boyunca partnerleriyle birlikte her gün bu çalışmayı yapıyorlar. Yani şöyle düşünün, bu online bir çalışma olduğu için Ankara'daki bir hemşire mesela İstanbul'daki bir cerrahla bir hafta boyunca düet çalışması yapıp ikinci hafta başka bir partnerle, örneğin Türkiye'de yani stresten etkilenmiş ya da stresten müzdarip bir başka kişiyle bu çalışmayı yaparak dinleme becerisini, şefkat becerisini artırıp yalnızlık hissini azaltabilir. Şimdi 3 yıldır ben aynı zamanda bir startup firmasının danışmanlığını yapıyorum. Humanize adı. Yani self-other ve humanity. Yani kendimi, başkalarını ve insanları yeniden birleştiriyoruz mottosuyla ilerleyen bir startup firması. Bu yani şöyle düşünün. Biz öncelikle ilk 20 eğitmeni eğittik ve 20 tane düet koç eğitimi tamamlandı. Yani ilk eğitici eğitimi tamamlandı. Ve sonra herkese açılacak. O yüzden ilginizi çekerse buna da bakabilirsiniz. Henüz daha çok erken aşamasında ama gerçekten iyi işliyor. Yani şöyle söyleyeyim, farklı dillerden insanları da bir araya düetler halinde getirebiliyorsunuz. Bu bir anlamda gerçek anlamda bir derinsel bağlanma, hem de küresel düzeyde. Ve negatif, sosyal medyanın negatif etkilerini tersine çevirmeye de çalışıyoruz bu çalışmayla. Çünkü sosyal medya bağımlılık yaratan bir şey. Sosyal medya özellikle gençlerde depresyonu artıran, dikkati dağıtan ve başka diğer problemlere de yol açan bir unsur. Ama burada diyalog kurdurarak, bunlar yalancı diyaloglar değil, bunlar gerçek anlamda. Yani şöyle değil mesela, işte falanca sosyal medya hesabımda şu kadar binlerce takipçim var demek yerine karşınızda gerçek bir insanla düet çalışma yapıyorsunuz. Evet, burada da yine çeşitli linkler veriyorum ve bu linklerden özellikle pandemide yapmış olduğumuz çalışmanın sonuçlarını burada alabilirsiniz. Sayfamda da yine bununla ilgili, bakın şurada göreceksiniz bu linki, şurada. Burada milyonlarca konuşma, kitap, makale, video, podcast, bunların hepsi var, mevcut. Eğer daha detaylı bilgi almak isterseniz buralara başvurun lütfen. Beni dinlediğiniz için çok teşekkür ederim. Umarım çok hızlı konuşmadım. Takip edebildiniz. Tania, çok teşekkürler. Çok güzel bir çalışmaydı. Nasıl hissediyorsun? Gayet iyi hissediyorum.
Şimdi aslında biz böyle bir kahve arası gibi 15 dakika ama soru sormak isteyenler var.